If you're a woman who suffers from fatigue or difficulty losing weight despite diet and exercise, then make sure to listen to today's episode. I have with me today Angela Brown, a thyroid coach who helps women overcome fatigue and start to lose weight even if they've had thyroid panels that have come back normal. Learn how Angela overcame her own thyroid problems and now helps other women with her program, the Sexy Thyroid Solution. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode and learn a lot from it. And if you do, subscribe to the podcast so you get notified of our future episodes.
You're listening to the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast with Dr. Dave Candy, St. Louis's leading expert in chronic pain relief. Dr. Candy specializes in helping women age 40 and above to overcome chronic, nagging aches and pains without medication, injections, or surgery, so they can stay active, mobile, healthy, and independent. Whether you're suffering from pain yourself or know someone who is, pain's a universal experience that affects us all, but that doesn't mean you have to suffer. Knowledge is power, and having the right information can help you or someone you love get on the road to recovery. On the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast, Dr. Candy talks with other pain experts from around the world to give you the information you need to recover, the peace of mind of knowing that you're not alone, and the hope that lasting relief from chronic pain is possible, and it doesn't require relying on pills, injections, or surgery in order to do so. So sit back, relax, and open your ears, mind, and heart, and let the healing begin.
Welcome to the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dave Candy. I have with me here today Angela Brown, a thyroid coach and creator of the Sexy Thyroid Solution. Angela helps people all around the world, but she's actually from right here in St. Louis. So Angela, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Hey there. Thank you so much for having me.
So this is a fairly niche down field. You don't hear about too many people who specialize just in the thyroid. How did you get into this subspecialized of a field?
Well, I actually was diagnosed with hypothyroidism when I was 22. I'm now 44. When I was diagnosed, I actually had struggled for almost about 4 years prior to that. Really had a tough time with symptoms and getting a diagnosis. Finally got diagnosed. Struggled for probably another 15 years of in and out of doctor's offices, not really getting a lot of help. Super frustrating. And I decided that I wanted to look into some type of program that I could learn from to help my own thyroid. And then I figured if I really like this, it's something that I could create a program around and help other women go through it as well. So about 7 years ago, then I got certified in something called functional diagnostic nutrition and learned a lot of testing. It's more of a functional medicine sort of holistic approach. So I had done essentially all the testing on myself prior to getting certified. And that's when I was like, man, this is really helping my thyroid. And so I thought, I'm sure there's other women that could benefit from this. So that's what led me to create the Sexy Thyroid Solution. And I can essentially help women anywhere now. And I'm loving that I can do that and share my own experience and how I went through it as well. It does make it easier for women to relate to that then.
Now, 15 years, that's a really long time. Is that common? How long does it typically take your clients to find you?
Sadly, it actually is common. I have a couple clients right now, actually, that have been like 20 years. I've been battling this for 20 years, in and out of doctors. And in my 15-year time frame, it was in and out of doctors' offices. I would feel a little bit better and then go backwards, feel a little bit better. So it was always a roller coaster. And that's what a lot of the women that come to me. I have some that are like, I just got diagnosed last year. And then I have some that, they got diagnosed over 20 years ago and have been battling with medication and doctors and not really feeling much better. And then I have some that don't even have a diagnosis, but, we're pretty clear that there's some thyroid stuff connected, but they've never really officially been diagnosed. That's the ones that are told, your labs look fine. Your thyroid looks great. I don't know what to tell you. So I see quite a few of those as well.
Now, what are some of the common symptoms that people suffer from while they're searching for a diagnosis?
Some of the biggest ones, especially, it's more common in women, is the biggest one always is weight gain or weight loss resistance. Just can't do anything right to get the weight off. That's a big one. And extreme exhaustion, a lot of fatigue, hair falling out, constipation, anxiety, really cold all the time. That's another really big one. They're just like freezing cold all the time. It's because their metabolism has essentially slowed down. The depression and anxiety kind of come together with it. And a lot of times that comes later on. And that's just because at that point, they're just super frustrated, can't really get anywhere. They even I have a lot that start to lose like the outer third of their eyebrows. There's just a lot of things that all come together that screams thyroid for sure.
And then what are some of the things that they try that haven't worked before they end up finding you somehow?
So quite often, they've been put on medication. Usually, the doctor usually ends up doing a blood panel. The hallmark test that they do for checking your thyroid is TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. And if that's elevated, they'll throw them on medication. Unfortunately, a lot of times they throw them on something like Synthroid or levothyroxine, which is just T4. And T4 is your inactive thyroid hormone. It's not active. T3 is your active, but you only make like 20% T3. You don't make very much. So you have to convert T4 to T3. And a lot of people with hypothyroidism, they can't convert. There's always a conversion issue. So when you're put on medication that's only T4, they're typically not feeling any better. A lot of times they feel worse, which is exactly what happened with me. I was put on T4 and just kept upping my dose, and nothing worked. And so a lot of times the women that have come to me, I do see that quite often where they're on that medication and they've tried it for years and it's not working. That's typically one of the big ones. The other one is they go on these crazy extreme dieting. They do a lot of caloric restricting, really extreme too. We're talking sometimes they're like under 1,000 calories a day, trying to kill themselves with exercise. They usually have exhausted all options that they've tried to get the weight off and energy to increase their energy. They're on, energy drinks and coffee and all of these things to get their energy up and trying medications. And then a lot of them are thrown on, which I was actually told that I needed to be on, antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication as well. And so a lot of them end up on that because their doctor's like, they don't know what else to do. They can't figure out why their thyroid won't work. And like I said, a lot of times it's because they're being put on T4 only medication. The other factor is there's a lot of things as to why your thyroid's slow. So there's not enough of an investigation, which is why I like working with women, because we dig in and find out what is actually making your thyroid slow. Let's not just throw a Band-Aid on with medication. That's always going to be a Band-Aid. Some need it. I actually still have to take it because I was, mismanaged with my getting diagnosis for 15 years. So I actually do have to take it still, super low dose now compared to what I did. But, some women absolutely have it. They're just going to always need it. But more often than not, the women that I see, when we find out, well, all these things are going on in your body that's slowing your thyroid down, that's actually why your thyroid's slow. So the medication will eventually not be necessary. And that's typically the goal.
Well, it sounds like your clients have a fairly similar journey as mine in the chronic pain world.
Yep.
Searching from doctor to doctor and not really getting solutions,
correct.
Band-Aid solutions that just cover up the problems.
Yep.
And I guess I didn't mention this in your introduction, but you know that personally because you are a PT as well.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly how you feel. And that's what they do. It's doctor to doctor, get another diagnosis. Just they keep tacking on all these things. And the frustration builds even higher because they're not getting anywhere.
So once your clients do find you, what do you do that's different that actually helps them start recovering?
Sure. So I do, like I mentioned earlier, I do a lot of advanced lab testing. So these aren't the typical tests that, insurance is going to cover, the tests that, doctors were going to order. I look at something called hair tissue mineral analysis. That's actually a really big one that I utilize. And it looks at your minerals. If you have metals present, that is a huge factor in thyroid health. A lot of times there's a pretty massive mineral imbalance with the women that I work with, as well as some metals that are present. And if you think about the periodic chart, metals and minerals are on the same thing. So if there's a metal present, it's going to knock that mineral out of the way. And that could be a mineral that your thyroid needs, like selenium, potassium. Your thyroid needs those. And a lot of times they're not present, and it's because there's a metal present. So I look at that. I also do a pretty comprehensive hormone panel. I use one called Dutch test, which is a dried urine test. And it's a 24-hour dried urine test that will look at your sex hormones, your cortisol pattern, looks at melatonin and a few other things as well. But the big reason I like doing this is, and I always use this analogy of a triangle. Your sex hormones are on one corner, your adrenals are on another corner, and your thyroid's on another corner. So they all have to play along. They all have to get along nicely. And if one's off, they're all going to be off. So I want to look at what's your cortisol pattern look like? What's your adrenals doing? Because a lot of times these women are under such immense stress, whether it started as a stressor and then they developed a thyroid condition or vice versa, it doesn't matter. You address it the same way. You're going to attack it the exact same way, regardless of what came first. It doesn't matter in that scenario.
And, you mentioned metals. How do people get exposed to these? Are these dietary, environmental?
That's a good question. So it can be both. There can be some like mercury. Mercury's in, tuna, salmon, stuff like that. So if someone's eating it every single day, which I do have clients that have done that, they'll get a mercury overload, like fillings that are used with mercury. Those, that can cause a mercury overload, and mercury is really connected to slowing the thyroid down. It can be just lifestyle exposure where you live. I mean, sometimes, if you're eating foods, coming from soil that has a lot of metals in it as well, it can come from that. It can come from beauty products. Unfortunately, sometimes they have little remnants of metals and stuff like that. If they're not clean products, they can come from that. So you unfortunately can get them everywhere. You're exposed no matter what. You're always going to have some type of exposure to metal. The key is your body in a healthy enough state that you can handle it and get rid of it and not like latch on and keep it just circulated around in your body.
And so I guess that brings us some to solutions. Can you tell us about your program, the Sexy Thyroid Solution?
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, I do a lot of the testing in there. When women work with me, they're either with me we do a 3-month or a 6-month program, but we're doing the testing no matter what. And then based off their testing, that's where I customize. And that's why I love doing this, because we basically customize everything that you're going to do is around what your test results show. So it's going to determine how, we're going to address what you're eating, what you shouldn't be eating, how you should be eating, if there should be more protein, less protein, more carbs, things like that. We really go over that because you can determine that based off of like the hair testing, for example, can really give me an idea of that. And then we go into a lot of lifestyle things. So it is, how's the liver doing? We go into what the gut health is like, because gut health is huge. 20% of thyroid hormone conversion happens in the gut, and then like over 60% happens in the liver. So we have to look at those. I don't ignore those at all because there is so much thyroid hormone conversion there. So we do a lot of addressing that. And then stress management is a massive one that I really dive into. Again, there's such a connection to the thyroid. And one of the big reasons why I really hone in on the stress part is under immense amount of stress, it will actually stop thyroid hormone conversion. And a lot of women, especially, when the conversion is trying to happen from T4 to T3, it reverts backwards. And so one of the markers that I actually recommend to get checked on a thyroid blood test is reverse T3, because if that's high, that tells me that you're actually going backwards. You're not activating T3. You're actually reverting it backwards. It's in an active form. So you're not going to feel very good. You're not going to have energy. You're going to be spinning your wheel trying to lose weight. It's just not going to make you feel very good when your reverse T3 is elevated. So that's why stress is a big factor. It can make that reverse T3 go really high when you're under an immense amount of stress. And that's a big connection between the adrenals, stress, and your thyroid. So I really look into that. And then sleep is another one that we go really in depth as well, because that's another big factor. If sleep is not there, your body can't replenish itself. So we go into that, even exercise and movement, especially with having the PT background. I really go into depth with my clients on that as well, because it's a really big factor. I want to make sure that you're moving, but we're moving in such a way that's going to benefit you, not make your thyroid and your adrenals worse.
So it sounds like it's a pretty customized program based on the results of whatever you found on the tests.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. Because if they're in a massive amount of stress, for example, if I'm looking at their tests and I'm like, holy smokes, there's a lot of stress appearing on these tests, as well as what they're telling me, we're going to take a step back and I will tell them, look, you are not doing intense workouts right now. You're going to do walking and stretching and maybe yoga, but you're going to chill the heck out. Versus someone who, if the stress part isn't as huge of a factor, I might be able to bump them up a little bit. So it's all customized around what I see and what they're telling me.
Wonderful. If there's someone listening to this who has some of those symptoms that you might have mentioned, like the weight gain, the inability to lose, even with diet and exercise, fatigue, how would they reach out and find more?
Sure. So I am on social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I'm on Instagram more. I'm Angela Brown Coach on Instagram, and on Facebook, I'm Angela Brown Thyroid Coach. And then my website, I have a lot of information on my website. It's angelabrown.org. And I have some free guides on there. I have a guide called The Secret to Reading Your Thyroid Blood Test. And then I have another one called The 5 Causes of Hypothyroidism. So those are on there as well. That's where they can definitely get some good information. So
we'll put all those links in the show notes. If there were a couple of closing thoughts that you'd like people to take from this episode today, what would those be?
First and foremost, if you suspect that you have a sluggish thyroid, if you're having a lot of these symptoms, definitely reach out to your doctor and get a full thyroid panel. The good news is that if your doctor won't run it, you can almost go anywhere and get them run yourself. But the markers that I would get checked are TSH, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, and then thyroid antibodies. So TPO and TGAB, which is thyroid globulin. I would get those checked. That's first and foremost. And I have all my clients do that as well. If they don't come to me with that thyroid panel, I'm getting it run for them. It's super important because you need a full picture. TSH is not a full picture, which is typical what they check. So that's kind of the first place I would start for sure. And then the other factor is looking at, your diet. If the diet is really inflammatory, if you're eating a lot of inflammatory foods, it is going to affect the thyroid. It is going to affect all those symptoms. So really look at those inflammatory foods. Things like gluten, soy, and dairy can be very, very inflammatory when you have a sluggish thyroid, even without a diagnosis. It can really make those things worse. So I would kind of hone in on those types of things. Eating more protein, vegetables, fruits, things like that is the best way to go. If I could give one tip about the diet part, that's what I would do.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share your information with us.
You bet. You bet.
Hope you have a great day.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you live in the St. Louis area and would like Dr. Candy's help to find a solution to your pain, visit our website at stlpainexpert.com. Email Dr. Candy at dave@stlpainexpert.com or call Dr. Candy's clinical practice at 314-941-3970. If you're listening from outside the St. Louis area but would still like some help, feel free to contact us to learn more about our virtual health coaching. Regardless of where you live, please share our podcast with anyone you know who would benefit from learning more about pain and what can be done to relieve it. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or your other favorite podcast platform so you get notified when we release a new episode. Thanks again for listening, and we hope you'll enjoy us again soon.